I think it's super low. Is this me? It might be me. Try speaking again.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, it's probably me. Okay. Yeah. We're doing fine. Let's. You got your camera?
Yeah, let me get all my stuff together.
Uh. Hey. All right. Let's get you on screen. Hey. Nice to see you, Toyola.
How's it going?
I'm all right. So yeah, this is the finale of the
Yeah,
DGG
I'm
Fight
really
Night.
excited. It's all coming to a nice close.
Yeah. So what were your feelings about this whole thing before we get started?
Definitely a learning experience. The next one's gonna be more streamlined. We're gonna have a lot more content prepared, and then a lot easier ways to get involved with it. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, this is different from my usual thing. I mean, it may look the same from the outside, but I assure you it's not. So yeah, but I am very much glad that we can get to this finale, that we can finally crown ourselves a winner, and they can take home the $1,200. In case you guys forgot, that's the prize pool,
Yeah,
$1,200 to the winner. Okay.
this like stressful project of ours is finally coming to like its natural conclusion, and it's very satisfying to see.
Indeed. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna bring them in. The participants are who again?
We have J-Boz and Octavian.
Okay, all right. So we're bringing them in. And that third person in there is are they related?
No, I don't know who that is.
Okay, just making sure. All right. Hello. Hello, you two? Hi.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey. Um, great, thank you for that. All right, yeah, I've got a camera, turn it on. Thank you, to the both of you for stopping by, for this
Thanks for
finale.
having us.
Yeah.
The finale.
Yeah. So one of these two individuals will walk away with the prize money. Toyola, could you introduce the subject?
Yeah, so the United States has had a history of intertwining public education and professional sports, and some people view this as a bit predatory or manipulative, and some people think that this is a great way for schools to support themselves. And each of these guys here have made it to the end of this tournament by putting together arguments and defeating each other's all the way up until now. And we're going to hear them take one side of this or the other. Octavian is in favor of decoupling the public institutions from professional sports, and J-Boz thinks that they should remain coupled.
Okay. So the pro side should go first, please.
So I want to get something out of the way first before we get into it. I'm advocating for a club-based nonprofit system, like most EU countries have, where you have like a club outside the school for kids that parents can opt into for their kids to do athletic programs, which most people do. So there are multiple problems with the U.S. system that we need to address. Number one is there's a massive problem with basically just professional athletes being seen as amateurs and being either abused, neglected. You've seen this with massive labor rights stuff that's happened in the past 5 to 10 years for NCAA stuff. You've seen this with massive problems with specifically baseball athletes and like the A- level who are like basically college athletes at some point. And you also see this in different places in the United States with even high school level sports being like basically monetized and having these kids basically work for schools or work for these institutions for free and not get compensated as they probably should because they're basically treated as multi-billion-dollar profit centers for these schools for like just their pockets. You have a problem where a lot of times as well you have like this connection between academics and athletics where the better of an athlete you are, you're actually seen as a better person academically, and the better academically you are, you're actually seen better athletically. So you have this problem where you have people who are the best athletes not actually getting to the peak a lot of times, or getting held back because of their poor academic performance. You also have people academically who are kind of not as much the same way, but are held back at some level for their athletic performance. For example, if you aren't part of a sport in high school, everyone knows, and you aren't like part of that varsity program, a lot of times you'll be seen as less, even if you have a better GPA, better ACT, SAT scores, than if you have people who are involved in those athletic programs. And then one of the things that is, happening as well in the United States, that is the fact that this is kind of already happening, which is the last thing I'm going to say, where you have programs like AAU basketball, you have a historical program like travel baseball, which is kind of almost already decoupled except for the high school level. And you also have club soccer, which is basically already copying the EU system and bringing out, decent, if not good results for the US team internationally. That's my opening statement.
J-Boss, you ready?
Yep. So the dilemma, I think the core of the issue is it's a problem of success. The most of this issue seems to be concentrated at the college level. So like the NCAA, along with like academic universities, with these huge sports programs. I think we're all familiar with these schools that are essentially just a football team, right? Like the hype and the drive of fans is so immense that these schools are becoming like almost centered around their sports program at the kind of, I guess, the downside of like the rest of its academics. I think the problem is relatively overblown. I think that we're taking steps already that will set us on a better path for players to be compensated and for the money to be managed in a way where there isn't as much of an incentive for these schools to put themselves into like over leverage into like building these sports facilities and attempting to invest in a team that will hopefully prop up their image as a school to attract more students. There are absolutely like issues going on. A lot of it has to do with just how much money there is flowing into it. I think from like the high school level down, I guess it may depend on which district you're in. For school personally, I think those systems are relatively okay. There's not a lot of concerns with like finances, although there may be like instances where school boards will make poor decisions financially, like building a new football stadium instead of renovating like facilities within the school itself. There's tons of examples of stuff like that. But I think the solution of decoupling is, it's putting the entire success that's been achieved at risk. And, while there are definitely downsides and side effects of this sort of like blossoming success financially, I think that like there's a way that we can adapt and move forward, both regulatory wise in, either state laws, the NCAA rules, or college laws, like the personal rules that the school will follow. I think there's a way that we can adapt what we have now into something that is going to better treat the players, better treat the other students at the schools who may be adversely affected by like the overreach of investment. I just think that there's no reason to tear this system down or decouple it when we can just adapt it and make it better.
Octavian? You're muted.
I'm muted. Yep. There's a couple things that I want to keep in mind here. So number one, he goes into these problems that could be like just minor problems. So number one, the money flowing into like these like academic schools, like for these programs, and the incentive for collegiate level and high school level programs, depending on where you're at. For example, like Texas football, something like that, where you get a lot of money for this and for like basically just pushing your football program. And the same thing with like collegiate football in Alabama and Georgia, and like other schools across the country. This problem would be solved if we did it like the Europeans, or we did it as a club program where you didn't have these schools trying to vie for funds for these sports programs, where they should be trying to vie for funds for how good they're doing academically, right? They should be trying to vie for funds for the programs they have on an academic level, right? If you don't have these like schools, having the ability to do this stuff, then you wouldn't need to do it, right? If you just had it to where, you just did some random local, AAU basketball league, there's no like AAU basketball funding problem for academics. It's more of like a minor level corruption problem between them, right? It's not like a, club sport program in Germany is like causing, mass amounts of academic failure for their students, or academic, not academic failure, mass amounts of academic problems for their students because they don't fund it properly, right? And then the second thing I want to say is there's no reason to decouple. Again, right? We talk about, or sorry, there's no reason to decouple. I just don't see this as like you can adapt the system where you have these innate flaws of having them connected, right? If you have this connection to where you need to have athletics for academics, you need to have academics for athletics, right? You have this enormous connection fundamentally of the funding. You have this normal connection as well with this like, kind of mesh together thing where you need academics for athletics and you need athletics for academics. I just don't see this as positive.
I think, I mean, it sounds like you're looking at it as like a codependent relationship, and I suppose it sort of is. I mean, like, do you have an example, I suppose, of like, give me like a case file of like, this is going badly for this person. Let's say it's like a student athlete. Could you like illustrate to me like what it would look like for somebody? Just say you make it into the team of a, I don't know, like relatively mid-level like NCAA basketball team, right? Like, well, what would be like, what downside are we looking at here on the daily life of like a student?
Right. So if we go
Student
to this
athlete,
mid-level,
sorry, student
yeah,
athlete.
so we're talking about somebody who's trying to pursue.
Sure.
We're trying to pursue like this person who's like at a mid-level collegiate level and they're trying to become professional, right? So you'd have probably one thing here where you have them go to some type of club locally when they hit 18, 19, 20, whatever, and when they do this,
I'm not
right,
talking about your ideal scenario. I'm talking about right now, today. What is the downside that a student athlete will face? Say you're not the biggest star on the team, right? But you're like an average student athlete. You made it into something that's like a mid-level NCAA basketball team. Like what is the tribulation that they're seeing due to our current system? Like what is the like on the ground example?
Right. So there are two ends to this. I mean, I give you like examples of more like labor being violated and stuff like that, or examples of stuff like that. But that's more of like a bigger issue, like for more like the high level athletes. But if you're talking about more this mid level athlete, I could give you a couple examples, but most of them would be personal example. But I'll give you like this hypothetical student.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have this number one. You have this problem of the student getting into this mid level school. Obviously, I'm not saying it's over the other students, but what I am saying, it's less likely that you have a higher academic student going to this mid level school because the funding now goes to this athlete who may not want to pursue certain academic fields, or may not want to pursue academics as a lot of the other students would. For example, if you're like this mid-level basketball player, you think, hey, like, the only reason I'm going to college is because I want to like get to the top. There's a lot of examples such as like John Morant that went to a mid-level school and stuff like that, who's now a professional basketball player and doing really well. But you have this, person who may not want to pursue academics and they want to do something else. Like they could not want to be in the college, but now because they have that one pursuit of, hey, I want to be able to at least have a chance to go to, this professional basketball, professional baseball, or something like that, you now have to go through these academic routes to do so, right? There isn't really another option outside of these going to ironically going to Europe or going to other nations to do that. I would say that's one problem. And obviously on the other side, you have the student academically who's spending an exorbitant amount of time instead of going to class, studying, becoming the best student they can be. You have this person who is spending hours, if almost full time, if not high level part-time job time onto athletics. You have this person who wants to be the best player they can be, but not the best student they can be, which at a collegiate level, I would say you're missing that hypothetical other student to be there to do that, to try and maximize their academic potential, right?
Yeah, I understand this perspective. I think like an interesting solution I've seen is this idea of creating like an actual major specifically for like you playing that sport, right? So like you would be majoring in like basketball, for example. I know this is like kind of it's totally out of off the cuff like an idea, but it's something I've read about before, which is where you like create these academic programs that are specifically tailored for like your sport, right? And that way, like you can better mold together the academics and the sports, and like create a better balance for the students. And you know, people with that kind of like degree, I mean, you could still be qualified. Are you like would a professional
Sorry, we
NCAA
can
like
hear you
or
typing. Hey, we can hear you typing. If you can mute yourself when you're.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Keep going.
so like the idea here is like oh man, my train of thought got so messed up. I'm sorry. Give me one moment.
You were talking about like somebody with a basketball degree and what they would be able to do.
Yeah, so like
Afterward.
you would still be qualified. I mean, uh, are you telling me that there's no like a person who's like a mid-level NCAA basketball player wouldn't be qualified to like teach physical fitness or become like an instructor, or you know there's 100% like so many skills you learn when you're doing basketball, right? I mean, I don't see why universities can't like better reinforce their capabilities. Like say you don't make it into like you know the pro leagues, right? Say you don't make it into like the NBA, but you still have like an education from like a highly respected athletic school behind you. A lot of these people can go on to have like very fruitful careers. And I think that's one of the big conflicts here is like the money thing. And the money thing, you're right, it generally aims towards the highest level players. But we're seeing laws like California passed a law that gives like individual athletes much more like control over like the use of their likeness, right? So it's like a personal likeness rights bill, and essentially it means is like so if you're an NCAA player and your identity is used, you know, in like a video game, and like you're very prominent, you know, prominently featured athlete, and I know there's a controversy before about NCAA athletes getting featured on, you know, like the cover of a video game that sold 15 million copies, but like he never saw a dime. So like these laws would better help protect these students, the highest level performers, right? So there's definitely like and already the NCAA is looking into like regulatory changes that will allow compensation. I think compensation is a good thing. A lot of these students, and when they make it into like NCAA teams, I mean they're an interesting statistic I read is like a vast majority, or at least a large number of these players, their family like would never ever be able to afford, and they personally would never be able to afford the type of like education that they're getting because of their athletics. And for I don't know, for some people that's compensation enough. I do agree that there should be like much better like compensation across the board, right? For all players. Like everyone should see a little something because like the TV rights are selling for $1 billion a year. I think the issue is like from just an adaptation perspective. Like the things that we're talking about in the idea of clubs, I mean, you're talking about the identity of teams that are like deeply rooted into these schools, right? Like this is what's created this problem is the hype around these teams. It's the image of these teams. I think that like causing a disruption in that player recognition it's gonna like it would probably cause a lot more damage and cost a lot more money than it would be just to adapt what we have and make it better, make it work better for people.
So, this might be a weird question, but have you ever gone to like a like minor league baseball game or a G League basketball game? Ever gone to any of
Yeah,
those games
so
before? Yeah.
I'll give you an example, and maybe this. So it's like a very local team, right? Um, we had like a coliseum in like the closest city to where I live, and it would be like it's definitely not a professional hockey team. It's almost more of like a local tradition, right? I don't know for sure if it's minor league, but I've been to like a bunch of games with teams I've never heard of, and for all intents, it looks like a professional baseball game. So I would assume that's probably it.
Yeah, most likely, right?
Yeah.
So you have like a lot of these teams that do have this like history and have this like probable height that you could have. for these teams. Like for example, the G League has like, you know, literal championships that they do every year. And a lot of time people in like Santa Ana and stuff like that will go out to the games and they'll get like, you know, 15, 20,000 people to go there, right? Obviously we're not at, you know, the collegiate level, you know, literal more than, you know, professional level games, right? With like 100,000 people showing up to, you know, Oklahoma games or stuff like that. But what you do have is this like ability to see the problem through, right? So you have these sub-professional level sports programs in the United States already, and you could actually make them better by adapting this to like a professional to amateur level program, as they do in places like Germany, places like France, where you can make this development better for the athletes, number one, and make their lives better, number two, because most of the time, at least like in most of the cases I'm reading about,
you're suggesting like really pissing off these minor leagues, right? Like you're saying like, well, we're just going to appropriate the minor leagues for college athletics.
In fact, I'm actually saying that we expand these minor leagues as development programs, right? If you look at specifically baseball as like the probably one of the best development programs, period, for like development, even though it still does use collegiate athletics, for like an American system that we could use. You have like multiple tiered teams. You have, you know, different leagues in which people can go up and down depending on funding, depending on how they do. You have players going up and down the system, and you have players, at least recently, now obviously there's been problems, you know, with payment in the past, getting paid money, decent money, to go play professional sports at these young ages, right? And if you're saying, oh, you know, these guys, you know, they're, you know, not being able to get that college education that you're talking about that they could be doing. But if you have, you know, some dude playing baseball getting paid, you know, $30,000 a year for playing baseball in the summer, and then able to go to these collegiate level classes, you're getting, you know, the same ability if they wanted to, right? But what you're doing is you're not forcing these players to go to school at the same time and destroy their academic career. You're also not forcing these students who are trying to be better academically to force to play athletics to, you know, get these scholarships, right? If you have the money for it, you have the ability to give these money to these students. Why don't you just give it to students who would perform the best academically? Why don't you give it for academic scholarships for those who do the best at the school? That's my real question here. I don't know why we need to have...
Are you talking about like the sports scholarships that are handed out?
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, like, and this is, I mean, it's definitely one of the problems, and one of the problems is like the quote unquote compensation you could directly associate is these scholarships, right? I mean, I think if we do go ahead and like adjust things, like, again, I think if we like have a better integration of sports and academics than we see now, with a lot of these schools, we could create programs. And I mentioned this before, I don't want to like rehash and take forever, but there's a better melding that can be done to make these sports more athletic, right? To make these sports more academic, rather. There's a solution there. And as far as the compensation thing goes, like, I understand the scholarship you're suggesting, like, would that even exist if it weren't for the sports team in the first place? You know, like the scholarship they're receiving is sort of kind of like the on, like, I guess, unspoken way of saying, well, here's how we're quote unquote paying you, right? Is like you're going to school for a free ride. You get like a stipend and scholarships that are just like extra money due to cost of school. They're you know, certain states, they're now able to like have personal like representational rights. And like, again, I agree. Like, I think we should be paying them, like, and it should be a transparent payment, and it shouldn't be like, you know, kind of built over like a scholarship. Like, give them scholarships and also payment, right?
Hey, Jay, your mic, I don't know, like, you're moving in and out away from your mic is scratching against your collar or whatever, right? So like,
oh, sorry, can you hear me better now?
Yeah,
we're good now. So yeah, I think I feel like there's a much neater way to integrate these things, because like these schools, and when you're talking about the other student who may be not getting like a benefit, right? It's like, oh, well, they're not going to get this scholarship. You know, again, how would that scholarship even exist if it weren't for sports and the popularity of the sports? If you look at like a feedback of like what students go to school for, a lot of kids who go to college, they're looking for a college experience over academics. And I think that's fine. And I think that you can still like get a good education and have a good career afterwards. But like, do you think kids going to a school with like one of the best like NCAA teams in the country. Do you think they're going to be going to that school because they're really interested in like the English program there? You know, like the priorities of students and the schools that they attend. I mean, you know, I imagine it's a conscious decision, right? Like a lot of the times, I mean, at least when I was looking at colleges, one of the first things kids were looking up is like, what's the college life like, right? Not the academics. So it's something that most 18-year-olds usually don't think about when they're thinking about college. But
I
yeah,
think
so what I'm asking is like like can you really draw like a very true like delineation that the sports program is causing this like downside in academics for these students? Like can you really say that like is that how the students feel for certain that they're being like that they're losing out because the sports program is siphoning all of the money? Like
I mean,
how do we correlate this?
I don't have a study to say like students feel X way about their sports programs or anything like that. I can't like say like, oh, there's been like, you know, X study. But like what I can say is there are a lot of schools that will try to develop these, well, I want to be honest, shit tier programs, um, and try to, you know, build up this, you know, hype around the school as you're talking about, you know, for the student life, you know, to get these programs, right? And a lot of time that money just evaporates, right? It goes nowhere, right? I can't really, you know, you know, I could give a couple examples, but the thing is that like a lot of times you have these programs which, you know, try to you know, involve student life in this stuff. You know, people go to Georgia, Alabama, not, you know, for, you know, a lot of times not for like the specific major they're going into, but because they want to go see Georgia and Alabama football as a student. You know, they want to go experience that, right? But that's actually kind of one of the problems, right? Where you have, you know, this person going, you know, to get a degree or to like progress their life, right? I agree. As a college student myself, I do want to make sure that the student life is good, right? But I also want to make sure that like I get a degree in something that matters. If all I said was, you know, I'm going to get a degree in something that doesn't matter, but I want to have like a cool, you know, frat or sorority life, I feel like I've like failed as a college student. Like I haven't done anything to, you know, progress myself, right? I've gone there to experience nothing. I've gone there to
Yeah,
like
and
party for a while. I
we
feel like
shouldn't.
we shouldn't incentivize those decisions for 18-year-olds. I don't really want that 18-year-old to like, no, I don't really want to give that 18-year-old the decision to be able to say, well, you know, this program is like literally the best for me academically, but you know, Georgia, you know, it does have, you know, a cool football team and I want to go to the games, so I'm gonna go there instead. And you know, they lose tens of thousands of dollars a year for that decision, right? I don't want to force students to make that decision. I feel like that's stupid.
I mean, I think like it's still a personal choice. I so like it like I mean, you're a college student. You're conscious enough to like be aware that you prioritize this in your college experience over that. If we think that like students are responsible enough to join like the army at 18 or to drive a car at 18, right? Like pay taxes. Once you become like able to vote, like you have like the conscious ability to like critically think and make these choices for yourself. So I think I don't like the idea of like artificially restricting like what colleges are allowed and not allowed to do. Like if I look up like West Virginia University, which is like one of the largest party schools in the country, you're not gonna see them like putting on a spread of like one of their fucking crazy parties where they have like an entire neighborhood is just like it's like an open air fucking festival, dude, and there's DJs and beer everywhere. Like, but that is like something that happens commonly in West Virginia. Also, couch burning is like a tradition there, but they're like they don't expressly advertise like, oh hey, come here. It's like it's from other students that they hear these things, right? And it's like, oh, I want this experience. I mean, you know, like short-sighted decisions. And I would agree that like maybe there is like a little too much freedom in choice for like how much money am I able to take out in a loan for XYZ, right? But some students are getting a free ride. Maybe their parents are just paying their way through. Maybe they just want to go to a party school. Like that, I don't know. I don't like the idea of like sort of forcing them into a particular decision because from our perspective, we believe that their priorities are incorrect. It's just
I do think that their priorities are incorrect.
yeah,
That's the
that's
problem,
fine,
right?
and
Like
that's okay to disagree with.
Yeah, but
And
the
you should
problem
voice that concern and educate people.
the problem is that like when you have a system where it's like, all right, we need people to spend thousands of dollars of their hard-earned cash. Let's make sure that they come here for the sports, right? Like I don't like that system. I'd rather you have like a system in which you have like a top research school, like everyone wants to get in there, or a top school where you have like a good student to teacher ratio, or like even you don't even have to remove student life in general from this, right? I'm not saying get rid of sororities and fraternities, or get rid of other parts of student life where you have the massive party halls of West Virginia. But what I am saying is if we get rid of these programs like specifically for these schools, right, and move it to a different part of American life, move it to somewhere else, right? We literally just take it and we're like, okay, right, you have this thing that's cool, right, which is like the hype and stuff like that about these non super professional teams, which other places have. We move it to a different place where it doesn't affect the academic futures of thousands of students. It just seems to me that you have this system in which you destroy the academic lives of so many students, or like even destroy the wallets of so many students if you're saying that so many people go to these schools to not even get degrees, right? Then I would say now I just like you're kind of negating the scholarships you're giving to this athletic students, because now you're destroying the wallets of somebody else who could have gone to like the local community college or local state college. Doesn't have that good of a team, but
I think like
has good of a degree.
I think the idea that people are being academically destroyed because their school has a sports program, I think that's a bit over what is that? I think it's a little like ridiculous. Like I don't think it's that bad. I don't know if you like, and if you have like something that you can show me to like substantiate this, I would take it right now because I'm curious.
If I can give you a school right now that has a shit program that's destroying it, like its academic futures.
No, I mean it, like a school where there's a disproportional like amount of students who graduate from there like have poor outlooks because, and you could somehow correlate it to like the fact that it has a huge sports program. Like if somebody goes to a school and is like disengaged with the academics, skirts by with like a whatever degree. I mean, personally, I've seen people get like straight D's and still have like a wild career afterwards for some reason. Like I think it's the way that like success after college looks for people is so fluid, it's so dynamic, it's so dependent on so many different forces that's really hard to pin down and say, well, this guy got a subpar communications course at a university because this one has a huge sports program, but like his local area has like a huge influx of demand for people to enter communications roles, like broadcast TV, for example. It's like they're still going to be able to like get a job. So I don't know. I'm looking for something solid, right? Like I want you to win me over on this. I'm looking for something to stand on. Right now, I'm just kind of like laying on my back in the water, just floating. Like I'm waiting for something solid to knock me around, right?
So my end specifically, when I made my own base statement, wasn't that specifically, hey, there's this massive school called Georgia, or this massive school called Alabama that makes fuck tons of money, which then goes back to its programs, which is why the SEC is getting massively big in football, as we all know, because like they make a fuck ton of money. And I'm not saying that. What I am saying is when you get these, when you're talking about this mid-level or low-level, D1 school that gives a fuck ton of money to its athletic programs, or you have like this high school that gives a fuck ton of money to its athletic programs, it makes it so that these students who could be getting that money for, let's be honest, a shit tier team, it still gets incentivized for these schools to try to get this shit like basketball, football team, because let's go try and win something. Let's go try and compete, because if we don't, we're going to lose a fuck ton of students to Alabama or Georgia, who also play football, right?
I mean
that's more the side that I'm coming on. Right?
But like if there's a competition like that between schools, I mean, eventually someone's either going to lose or they're just going to over leverage themselves into oblivion, right? Like so. I guess like if you want to like make a case for there should be tighter regulations on the way that colleges like appropriate like money, that I can like sort of get behind. I mean, I think we've all seen, but like if you look at any college, you'll find like a ridiculous misappropriation of funding, like in almost every circumstance, right? I know locally there's a university that has like grown exponentially, and it's like down my street, and like their president of their college was at a party with students and said, "We own this fucking town." And to be honest with you, they sort of do. Like, and they do because they keep spending insane amounts of money on like sports facilities, dude. And the people coming out of that school like have like huge earning potential because it's still like academically like apparently very well connected to certain programs. I know several people who graduated from there have gone on to like medical fields, they've gone into like technology fields, they've gone into like movies. Like I know filmmakers who went there. So it's like I don't know, it's kind of weird to me. Like I I think like you're right. There's the I think the problem is like we don't really have like a government that has like every single layer of this sort of system able to be like regulated and held accountable, right? Like maybe it's different in Europe where the structures like are more tightly wound between like local district academics and like these sports clubs, quote unquote. But the system that we're existing in now, unless we want like a radical revolution of how it works, which I think is a little ridiculous for this problem, I think it's much better to adapt. I think that we're agreeing that these problems exist. I'm not denying their existence. I think there are solutions, though. I think there are solutions that can be far more effective sooner and cheaper to implement than what you're suggesting.
Sooner and cheaper to implement. I mean, we already have people trying to have these non-school based systems for obviously I'm not talking collegiate because collegiate is so big at this point, but like specifically for high school and pre-high school level where you have like middle school teams and like stuff like that. You have a system in where almost every sport at this point is trying to have a system in which they're decoupling education, they're decoupling these schools from trying to do that stuff, right? Where you have AAU basketball, specifically travel baseball team. You have club soccer, which literally copies the EU system and is one of the only reasons the US is even like getting anyone out of like that's good in US soccer, right? Like all three of these reasons is where you're getting these these quote unquote high school athletes, right? You're getting these people not from except for like specifically at least in basketball, which is my biggest knowledge, unless you're going to like specifically an athletics high school, which is crazy to say. You're getting these people from AAU like scouts. You're getting these people from travel baseball tournaments that go across the country that like people can go to wherever they are, right? You get it from club soccer tournaments, right? You don't get these players, at least at a sub collegiate level. You don't get them at these you don't scout them at these high school games, right? This is not like at least how it works. At least
that's I think that's fine. I mean, there's no reason why those things shouldn't exist, and I'm not arguing against it. We have like college athletics seeing huge amounts of money, and we can also have these programs opening up. I think more accessibility is good. I don't see why these two things couldn't exist in unison. I mean, the purpose of the NCAA is literally because it's college athletics, right? Like that's why this exists. I don't think anybody like sure they may have engineered the scenario in which like the fan outpouring would be so extreme that it's garnered all this attention, all this hype, it's generated all this revenue, right? I don't know. I don't see like it just sounds like there are people who have a demand for this sport to be played. The colleges aren't facilitating it. They can start a club. This is great. I don't see what's wrong with that, right? Like if colleges eventually decide to like pick up this sport program themselves, they can do that. Like I don't know. I think it's good. I think the more ways that we can allow kids and students access to these athletic programs that can allow them to be the very best that they could be. I think that in any avenue that they exist, they should continue to exist as far as accessibility goes. Because again, after I was reading about like these kids' lives are totally fucking changed. Like some of these athletes, a lot of them, their families like would never imagine them being able to even like go to a school like this in the first place if it wasn't for fucking basketball. Like I don't know. I feel like I just don't understand why we need to like swat this fly with a bazooka. I mean, the NCAA is implementing regulatory changes that will allow like players to become compensated, right? They're looking at that for their new like regulatory stuff going into like the next coming years, and that's because this demand that we're talking about, the demand for compensation, the outcry from students is being heard and it's being looked at. States are coming down on them. So I don't know, like I'm still looking to stand on something right now, man. Like I'm trying.
So you're looking for what, a better system in which we could develop better
No,
athletes and have
I'm
better
looking
students,
for
or
a
what?
reason why we need to detach college like athletics from schools. I'm still not seeing a reason. Do you know, like, I don't know if you know this, in Europe it's a lot easier to get around on foot than it is in America, dude. In fucking high school when I played football, there were kids that under no circumstances would ever have been able to travel like to a field because where they live is like closest to like the nearest major city, and the closest field to them is like on the other side of my town where they're bused in to go to high school. These kids would have never had the opportunity to like to for no cost on their end to like engage in sports like this. Like when, and I don't know about you, but the private leagues, like even if they're nonprofit, they still are going to cost you fucking money. Like they're the ones, at least in my town, and I know about some of these leagues. I've seen them, and they're just all like fucking like kids who have like middle income. Like they're just middle income kids. Like they're kids who didn't ever have to worry about this, who get dropped off in nice big SUVs, dude. Like I don't know. I've seen like what this accessibility does for people, and I've seen like kids who would have never gotten dropped off like by their parents for practice, able to go to football practice, right? Like I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I think
Yeah.
there's a scenario where clubs can absolutely exist alongside like academic athletics, and it would be totally fine.
So one of the things I want to keep saying, right, is you have this, requirement for students who want to excel academically, and you have this like, hey, you need to be involved. You need to like, be part of a sport, right? If you ever talk to a high school counselor, right, one of the big things they're going to say is, how involved are you in sports, right? Because if you aren't involved in a sport, it's going to be seen as like a massive downgrade for the schools that like you want to go to. Right? For example, if you want to go to, let's say, let me just say a random school. Let's just say like Purdue or something, and you want to go to Purdue, right? A big thing for you to be able to get to Purdue or like one of these bigger schools, or even one of like a minor school, and get like a scholarship for that, is to be involved in this sporting program from the school, right? Which is now forcing your school to say, hey, we need to have a good sporting program so they can look at our students and say, hey, we know that, or hey, we know what they do there and stuff like that, even if you're not going to most local school, right? It's just you're forcing now people who don't really want to be part of athletics, that like don't have to be, they're not required to.
So wait,
To get a better education.
You're sincerely going to tell me that somebody who's excelling academically has to play football in order to get into a good school?
No, what I am saying is those who are above average academically, to be able to get to the above average school, have to do above average things such as playing sports, right? I'm not saying the student who gets the 1600, or the student who gets whatever the insane GPA 16 4 point whatever 1600 and whatever, like can't get to Harvard or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. Or well, they can't. But that's a different problem. Like
I don't know. In personal experience, I haven't engaged with going to college for a while. In personal experience, I know plenty of people who got full rides to Ivy League schools and never touched a sport in their life. So I don't know. I don't think
that's why I didn't say an Ivy League school, because Ivy League schools are
like, and I think like if you're saying like, well, if you want to get an athletic scholarship, you should participate in athletics, right? Like that makes sense. That's what those scholarships exist for, right?
Yeah, but I would rather have a system in which you don't have to participate in athletics, or you shouldn't be like a requirement for students, or like a highly recommended, where basically like it's either like you do athletics or you do like, I don't know, something else, like fucking some, like I can't think off the top of my head, where you do that and you have to do that or else you're fucked. Like, because if you don't have, for example, you have to like let's say there's a student who like has to go to a part-time job after school, or has to work as a fucking janitor or something after school, and can't participate in any athletic program, but is insanely not insanely gifted, but it's like, pretty good, gets in the honors program, whatever, at their high school and stuff like that, and is able to get to these, different stuff, but just can't participate in athletics. Or let's say there's a student who just isn't athletically gifted and doesn't get to the varsity team, but is pretty well academically gifted and is now getting taken away for a student who is athletically gifted, for the same thing, because we want to couple these programs, right? I just don't see on this end.
It sort of only reinforces. It only reinforces like we need to better intertwine college sports with the academics. I think like the example I gave again of like the basketball major is excellent. Like if you are brought into a school because you excel athletically, and you enter into this program that is like a major in basketball, for example, like basketball management, maybe even like coaching, I don't know, whatever you want to fucking name these programs. Like I think it's kind of, I really don't think somebody who's like above average academically is going to have a tremendous issue. I think like if they are competitive about their education and their only option is to like play a sport to get into above average schools, that just seems kind of a little ridiculous to me. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like again, and it also even then sounds like an issue that we can self-police on. Like there's probably a way you can pass some kind of law that says, hey, you can't like discriminate against above average students if they don't play a sport or something. I don't know. To solve whatever minute issue this is generating. I don't think we need to restructure the way college athletics work in order to solve this problem. You know what I mean? There's like a solution out there, right? We don't need
so
to
now you have to have, what I'm trying to say is you have a single solution for this problem that we see on like multiple levels, right? Where we're talking about, all these different things here where, we see small problems, problems with, labor rights, problems with, different, academic and athletic results. We see problems with, different types of funding going to, the wrong types of places. We see a lot of like these coaching problems for these schools, and you have a solution for all the problems instead of, trying to get, all these, minor things in, if we were just trying to say, oh, you could just regulate healthcare, like to get it to everybody, just have like 100 different solutions for each, minor problem. So
yeah, and you're also talking about passing a law that says schools can't have sports programs. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, dude, come on. Like, really? This is the solution?
I'm saying it would be better. I'm saying it would be better. I'm not advocating it's like ability or like it's the ability to pass through Congress or whatever. What I'm saying is, hey, here's a solution to all the problems.
It's not even passing it through Congress. It's just like,
yeah, I understand. It's like it's unreasonable to a lot of people, especially in the South, to say, we need to stop collegiate, football programs or whatever. Obviously, I would understand that. But again, what I'm trying to say is there's a solution to our problems that we're seeing here. We're talking about it all night, all these problems, like, oh, but we can regulate that. Oh, the NCAA is trying to solve these later problems. Oh, I don't see, where this is like a likely scenario. Oh, the funding problems for schools that are bad, go to athletic programs that are also bad. When you don't better the academics, you see all these problems and you have a solution to solve the problem, right? Like you have a solution I've given to you. And you're like, well, you don't technically need to do that. All you need to do is, have an exorbitant amount of regulation, change how the NCAA works, and make it to where, now you have club systems on the same level, and you have all these like opportunities given to students at the same time. Like it's both like unreasonable and not arguing what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is a better system. It's going to be a better system if we were to do it, right?
I don't know. The things I'm suggesting, and the reason why I'm suggesting them is because it would be far less invasive than what you're suggesting. We're not talking about sweeping regulation, right? You have a bill that's passed through the state Congress in like 6 months after it's introduced, dude. It's signed off on. Boom. You college students in that state now have a right to certain amounts of compensation based on their likeness being utilized. Like, it's not that fucking complicated. Sure, it takes time. All things take time. Money tends to flow in faster than we are able to compensate for it. And, I still think I still think it's just like unreasonable to like deconstruct this. I mean, what you're suggesting is like the ridiculous overreaching side of it, right? Like we can regulate these things. I mean, look, we have top players like protesting their treatment, and I think it's good, and I think they should be able to do that. Like, they should have their voices heard. They should be compensated. Like, this isn't something that's listen, in the $1 billion that these broadcasting rights are being acquired from, I'm sure they can find a little bit of scratch for our boys. You know what I'm saying?
We don't
like,
disagree. We don't disagree on that. We don't disagree on like the problems that exist, right? I don't, or maybe we do, but I don't see the fact that, hey, you know, you could have, you know, all these different ways to, you know, solve these, you know, problems that will still exist, right? The payment of students like will still be a problem, you know, 15, 20 years from now. It will still be an issue. You know where it won't be an issue? It won't be an issue in places like Germany. It won't be an issue in places like the UK. It won't be an issue in places like Italy. That have these systems already in place that have already solved this problem of labor rights for students, or labor rights for at least younger individuals trying to get into sports or amateur sports, right?
Dude,
you don't have this problem, right, in these places.
What I'm saying,
but we do have it here. Why? Why do we need this? Why do we need to keep this problem?
Open up these fucking clubs, dude. This is what I'm saying, and we're already doing this too. We have clubs filling in for a demand that's not being met by colleges. Holy shit, it like works, right? If it does work, and it truly does overtake like the college level athletics, then in 15 to 20 years, maybe we would end up with a completely different system. But I'm not saying like forcefully decoupling these things is a reasonable solution. I mean, it would take fucking 40 years to even develop the clubs at the scales that these schools are operating on. And the fans already have a demand. How are you going to meet that demand all of a sudden, dude? You're going to open up like a broadcasting operation for this club program in like what, a year? Like,
it already exists for like specifically for soccer, which is the like thing that which we have the most, you know, information on, you know, the transition, because we kind of already tried to shift this from the collegiate level, which, you know, NCAA is still fighting, which is what I want to talk about, is the NCAA is still fighting to keep this stuff, right? For specifically for soccer, club sports are like, you know, not incentivized for NCAA levels, right? They're gonna try and fight to the, you know, bitter end to, you know, keep these places out, you know, to make sure that they still go through the collegiate level, they still go through the NCAA, right? Because they have an incentive monetarily, like power grabbing wise, like so many incentives for them to not want this to happen, right? And you have the club sports.
The market speaks. If they win, they win. But right now, every single
but that doesn't
year,
make it a better system.
It doesn't
make it. It doesn't, just because you get paid more doesn't make it better for the students, for the athletes, for anyone. It doesn't, just because you get more money doesn't mean it's like a better system, right? Just because like you're a fan of Penn State or some shit doesn't mean like that's the best thing for the students, right? That doesn't mean anything. What we're trying to do with this conversation, at least what I'm trying to do, is trying to say, hey, there are better ways to do this, right? That we see in other places, and we just don't do it because we think our system, like for some reason, works better, right? Which it doesn't. It just doesn't work better, right? Which I was going to with the club soccer example, is that club soccer has produced insane amounts of talents for soccer in the United States, right? Basically, almost the entirety, to my knowledge, of the current U.S. men's national team is created through a club soccer system, and those players did not go to college for that system, for the highest of highest levels, right? And you know what happened? They got paid. They got paid.
There's no demand for it.
There was a demand 20 years ago, right? I mean, it's not like you have, you know, these massive, you know, 200,000, you know, things or people going to these massive different things here. We had a lot of programs that wanted to have, you know, the really best collegiate level soccer program. And what happened is you had a system in place called club soccer that would be able to develop people before they got to the collegiate level. And you had the MLS allowing these development programs to exist and actually funding them, and then getting them to go to professional leagues at the age of 18, at the age of 19, at least for the higher level student, or for the higher level athletes. And their development made better athletes, if you want to talk about that. And what I'm saying is that by decoupling them, you make better athletes, and you have the ability to make better students, right? And you solve a lot of these problems that we're talking about.
You're truly saying that a college athletics program could not adapt in a way that benefits the student in the same way that a club program would.
It already happens.
What do you mean it already happens?
So like I said with the club soccer example, right? You had a system in place that the massive NCAA soccer programs, and that like funded high school soccer programs that like went to all these different stuff in the middle school level, right? And then suddenly you had club soccer come to, like, it didn't just come into there, right? But it became mass prominence after, you know, I believe like specifically 2000 or whatever year the United States went far in the World Cup, right? You had investment from different actors and stuff like that from MLS, and when and you had these different people try to make a better development system for soccer to make better athletes, to be able to fund it so students could, or not students, so children could be able to be a part of it, get the same camaraderie, get the same fan bases, right? And you have a system in place now where you have, multiple tiered teams like they do in Europe. You have a system in place where you have development programs within these clubs to be able to say, hey, this club has a professional side, right? For example, you have like LA Galaxy, which has its development program in LA.
Let me interrupt you for a second. What caused this soccer, and specifically, to become detached from like the NCAA? Can you outline that for me?
Specifically funding from MLS and other, specifically like I believe FC Barcelona had massive amounts of investment. And
I don't know what any of those names are, and I doubt
so
a lot of
MLS is
people
Major League Soccer,
it.
which is the United States soccer league, basically, which funded a mass amounts of development programs. And then FC Barcelona is like one of the biggest, soccer teams in the world.
So this was a drive from Major League Soccer rather than the universities.
Yeah, so they try to they say, hey, this is a mass amount of people who could be better at soccer or whatever, and we think that by decoupling soccer from these educational platforms like high schools and middle schools and universities,
did they truly say that, or was the problem that the academic side of things weren't accommodating enough to the demand that was being presented to them?
No, that's basically what they said, because they're like, this system works in Europe, why can't we do it in the United States? That's literally what they were saying.
So it's basically what they said, is that this is the model we want to go with.
Basically what they said, we think that this model works, it's worked in other nations, why can't it work here? And then it did work. That's why we're going to World Cup as like a semifinalist most likely, right? Or like a quarterfinalist, instead of being kicked out of the World Cup again.
So like, again, I'm not sitting here saying, I literally told you before, I think the club model is fine. Again, like we're talking about, so like, are you saying from the NCAA level, soccer teams just like evaporated?
No, like, they still exist. They exist, but they're like a lot of teams. So for example, like
give me some rope here, because I'm trying to understand this. So the Major League Soccer, like the Major Soccer League of America, consciously went through and just wanted to start this program, found that it was highly successful, right? So it had nothing to do with, like, say for example, like the NCAA either dropped the ball or they weren't attentive enough. This is just like them saying, well, we're going to create this program, right? Because again, I don't think there's an issue with that. And I don't know how that, like, I don't see how, like, in for universities, you can't have like the NCAA coexist with a club league at the same time. Why does it need to be decoupled? Because
you have these problems, right, that we outlined earlier.
Soccer. It didn't stop soccer from doing it.
Right. What I'm talking about is you have these problems within the academics, right? You have these problems with the schools right now that need to be solved, right? At some point need to be solved. And one of the ways to get to that solution is decoupling, right? We also see, or specifically, if we want to advertise this to sporting programs, right, that making it a club system will make it more beneficial for themselves to get a monetary incentive, right? If you want to talk about that, right? For like specifically like MLB, MLS, like whatever other league you want to talk about, right? It'll be more profitable for them. And it will help these academic institutions now focus on these athletic programs, right? It'll be able to have them focus on academic institutions.
So aside from forcing the change, why hasn't this change already began in its own?
Because people are used to, people like what they're used to, right? So you have these.
So people like what they used to. They're fans of the sports that they're used to seeing. They're fans of the NCAA. They understand it, right? Something that they know.
What do you mean they understand it? What do you mean?
Like it's
they don't understand these problems.
It's something that
they don't understand the problems that we're talking about. No, they don't understand the problems. They're just fans of, hey, I'm a fan of Texas, right? I like Texas football, right? Because I like Texas football. And, I don't like these major league sports because like they're bad or whatever, right?
So you don't think erasing $1 billion industry a year, not $1 billion industry, that's just broadcasting rights, but you don't think like that's going to cause fucking huge problems for schools, for students, for players. Like, you don't think this is going to cause ginormous fucking problems? You're going to rush to compensate? If you want to make a club, make a fucking club. There's no reason why these things.
Where are the problems in
can't
Germany?
exist.
Where are the problems in places that already have this solution? Where are their problems?
They don't have the same college athletics that we do. So
yeah, they have what they do have is they have development programs at a similar level and a lot of fans that watch those teams, right? If you're watching an FC Bayern game, but you're watching like more like a D2 league, right? There's a lot of fans for those leagues, right? You have, maybe not as massive as the United States, but you have fans at least for those leagues, right? I'm not saying that, it's at the same level, right, as what we have, because obviously, I don't think there's very few sporting events period that could get to US, collegiate sport, fandoms, right? But you still have, hey, I'm going out to Peoria and I'm going to watch, a White Sox development team, right? Which I've done before. But that's like only I do that because I'm fucking weird, right? In the United States, if you had a system that, you would still have people going out, I want to go see who's the next big talent, right? I'm going to go watch, some random ass AAU team, like at a collegiate level, or I'm going to go watch, some random ass, fucking, some fucking Peoria.
I guess again,
right?
And I'm going to keep saying this.
System.
Like, I haven't heard a reasonable case for saying doing this is far better than just fixing what we already have to addressing these concerns.
Because we're not going to be able. So as I've stated before, we still. How long do you think it's going to take to solve the labor problem in the NCAA? How long do you think it's going to take?
I don't know. So they're reacting pretty quickly. Hold on, actually, let me.
Because we've had these problems with NCAA for decades, right? It's been a literal SAT problem question for decades, right? We've literally known this problem basically forever, right? To my knowledge, right? The only systems that have solved these problems that we have in our system are the club-based systems, right? If you're saying, oh, we're going to solve all the problems in our system, obviously I would be for it, right? But again, you're like, oh, we're making strides, okay? We're making strides in, I'm going to appeal to a lot of lefties. We're making strides in healthcare. That doesn't mean we can't, try to solve this, have a solution to the problem, right? I just don't see why, we just need, do incremental change, keep it the same. I just don't see why we have to do that when we can, change the system, right? And actually, see a solution to the problem, right? Instead of, instead of, forcing schools that, are shit to stop their programs and some regulatory level that have terrible programs. What we should do is we should, I don't know how you're ever going to get that regulation through, right? Where you have schools that are terrible at sports programs, stop funding their sports programs. I just don't see how you're going to get that solution through.
We are coming into the end of this. I wanted to read, we have some questions from the judges. I wanted to read them out to you. So a judge asked, they gave two questions. One to Jay, one to Octavian. To Jay, you made the argument that what matters most is the degree and not the grades that a person achieves. But what would that have been? But would that have been an argument for decoupling education from sports? Why not encourage moving away from spending money on academia if most of the value is from social signaling and not on skills you obtain?
Was the initial statement that the degree matters more than the grades?
You made the argument
So this may have been I may have incorrectly framed my sentiment. My sentiment is, my sentiment is it. Can you reread the question just one more time? I just want to make sure.
Not a problem.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
You made the argument that what matters most is the degree and not the grades that a person achieves. But would that then be an argument for decoupling education from sports? Why not encourage moving away from spending money on academia if most of the value is from social signaling and not on the skills you obtain?
I'm not sure what social signaling means. I'm not sure where this idea of my perspective came from, but I want to understand because I think I was misunderstood. So my initial argument was,
Oh,
and it was
and
pushing.
before you respond, hey, to the judge who sent that, if you could possibly
Yeah, can we move back to this in a second and
sure,
see if they can
well,
clarify that a little
yeah,
bit for me? I
go
really
ahead.
want to answer that.
Clarify exactly
That'd be
what you
awesome.
mean by social signaling and just your question in general, and I'll read that. While we're waiting, I'll go to the other question to Octavian. To Octavian, if you are opposed to sports programs on the basis that they substitute away from the optimal level of educational attainment, would you then ban all aspects of student life, such as fraternities and clubs, if they reduced students' grades or shifted resources away from academic endeavors?
It obviously depends. Number one, I'm not saying ban all student life activities. Obviously, certain activities do not involve the mass amount of time we have for sports, specifically at the collegiate level or the high school level. If you have like a fraternity or sorority, there are other arguments to ban those that I have positions on that are like different. Instead, to ban those specifically. Other student life, as long as it's not, you know, hey, you have to do this every day and you travel a lot, and you go away from these academic programs, as long as it doesn't, cross that threshold where it's like basically almost a full-time job, I don't see a problem with it. There's like this threshold somewhere where it's like, an in-depth club and basically just a full-time job that like athletics does, and it's somewhere in there. But most clubs and other stuff don't really do that, so I don't see a problem.
Okay. We're still waiting on that clarification from the other judge, but I'm sure we'll get that soon. So, do you all think that overall that a new direction for, like, how likely do you think a new direction in the U.S. Could be made, right? Like, so like J-Boz, basically, are you saying that like even if we did find a new direction, it'd be impossible to implement, because the sports, because this is a bit more of a defragmented system. Excuse me, it's fragmented system. So putting in going in a new direction might be a bit more difficult.
I think so. Like culturally speaking, shifting like this sports, the specifically like, because one of the only areas I researched was NCAA, but shifting like the most popular area of college athletics into this new system is obviously going to cause like a ton of fucking problems. Like you have to create a whole fucking league basically all over again. If you scramble players, now you have people don't know who they want to root for. I mean, you're just going to piss off the fans. But I think both things can work in tandem. What I haven't seen here is an argument saying like, well, if this is doing a poor job, why don't we just introduce the clubs? There's an example of it like working in the instance of soccer, although if you ask me, I think culturally people don't really give a shit about soccer in the US as much as they care for something like basketball or football or baseball, for example. I mean, I'm not a sports guy, so I don't know, but that's just my assumption. But I haven't had an argument presented that I think like gave a very solid, hey, this is why we should just not allow schools to have these programs completely separated. Like, why can't they just both exist? And if this private club league is able to either force the NCAA to change or force college athletics to change, then that's an effect that the demand is being met, that the issues that the college athletics were causing were enough to dissuade like up and coming talent from engaging with the universities. Instead, they're going into the club route. So if anything, I think competition is good. I think it spurs on that innovation and it sort of lights a fire under their ass and it says, hey, well, listen, dude, you either adapt or die. I think like the issues for the students who aren't associated with sports still exist. I think like it sucks, but I don't think it's as dramatic as it's been laid out to be. I don't see any evidence suggesting that it's as widespread of an issue as it was suggested of being. So,
Okay, sure. And our friend Octavian, excuse me, Octavian, how likely do you think the reforms you're advocating for could be can be put in place?
If I'm going to be honest, the likelihood it's going to be put in place, I'm going to almost have to agree with J-Boss here, is almost impossible, mostly because of, one, the NCAA making a fuck ton of money from this, and they're always going to fight against it, for especially for football and basketball, which are their big money makers. They're basically never going to allow this stuff to exist in that way, especially at the collegiate level. At a high school level or pre-collegiate level, like basically subverting the NCAA, I could see that being possible. It's kind of hard to say though. For example, like players can go into the G League now if they think that if teams recruit them for basketball, and football has like there's like the new league that they just formed that was like just in the news a few weeks ago, and like has this like summer season or whatever that seemed to also have like a G League type thing. So unless like you go through that, I don't see it likely. But if these sports continue to push these things where they kind of subvert the NCAA and just say, we're going to allow some people to go to these programs, I could see it working there. At high school level and before, I think it's already happening almost, and is like, it's not like it's there specifically with football, because football is like really complicated to be able to make a club and like have club sports for that. But for like a lot of other sports, you already have the system in place for that level at least, or almost in place, kind of.
Okay. And Judge to J Boss got a chance to get back to us, right?
Awesome.
And I'll read exactly what he says. He types, he said that a person with D's with a degree from a decent university matters more than the grades. If you could mute yourself, Octavian. He said that a person with D's with a degree from a decent university matters more than the grades they have. And that is part of the reason why scholarships are important and why he is against removing sports from colleges. That seems to mean that the degree matters more than the skills, because a person with D's clearly didn't learn much while they were in college. Maybe you can clarify. Then he says, if that's true, then there is no value to attending the school as an athlete other than saying, I went to Johns Hopkins.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so what I'm actually suggesting is, and I think there may be an issue where academically, like for athletes, the symptom may be true. So it's the idea where, well, I was a college athlete going to, wherever, and I was studying fucking nutrition or something, right? I think that, like, while being somebody who's like competing at that level would likely endow you with a great deal of knowledge that will give you a skill set outside of college, I don't think that these colleges right now are doing a great job of like taking a program and saying, hey, why don't we lean into the strengths of our sports program, right? And this may be kind of throwing a bone to Octavian's argument, but what I'm actually advocating for is an even greater integration. So I'm saying let's lean in full stop to this basketball program. We can piggyback our communications off of it. We can piggyback our journalisms off of it, right? Like academically entwine these things to a greater degree, or you can make the most out of it. I mean, are you going to tell me that like a college athlete who's being looked at by like the NBA isn't going to walk away at that moment with like a great skill set and knowledge base and like work ethic that's going to make them successful? I think there's an argument to be made, right? So all I'm really advocating for is like it would actually benefit schools to more closely integrate the education with the sports and like take advantage of like every aspect of it, right? I took a communications program in college, and one of the things you were able to do was like do an actual live broadcast of their basketball game. It was huge. That experience is actually massive. That'll get you an internship at like a really serious broadcasting place like right away. And incidentally, it was like one of the only colleges that really ever did that in my area, at least. So it turned out to be one of the best communication schools that were at the state level. But yeah, it's stuff like that. I think they're like colleges are sort of, they have the wrong perspective It's like, why don't you lean into these advantages? So it can be less about like, well, I got a degree like this from this school. Because even if these players don't become picked up by like professional leagues, I think that they can like absolutely walk away with like an incredible skill set that was paid for by their athletics. That makes them very competitive in the labor market. I don't know. This is my perspective, and that's one of the solutions I've seen suggested. So hopefully that answers it. If it doesn't, like, let me know and I can clarify further.
Okay. Why don't you all, because we don't have any further questions from the judges, why don't you start giving your final statements? Okay, so since Octavian went first, why don't we have Jay go first now, and we'll go to Octavian.
So I think at the core of the issue, we see similar problems. I just think we have different perspectives on the solution. And it just so happens that the solution is so drastic that it like radically alters the entire like subject that we're looking at, to the point where it's like unrecognizable after the fact. I think that there's a way that you can improve what we have, make it better. I also think that if competition from a club league would, work on actually motivating change and creating a competition between the colleges and this, private club that would offer, more very clear compensation to players. But, it doesn't exactly substitute the problem of academics. If you're playing a club sport where like an NBA is like scouting you, you're probably doing like the year-long routine, just like the people are in college. So like the balance of time management at a personal level is still going to be a problem. There's still a lot on these guys' plates. So that may take that's why I think the approach of like combining academics with sports is far better. I think that's strengthening the existing foundations that we have, creating a solution over time. Say we set a goal in the next 10 years, we want players to be fairly compensated. We want this idea of stability so that there is a better equilibrium between schools, between the NCAA, and between the players. I think the solution that was suggested by my opponent is impossible by their own admission and impractical. Even if it may be a super effective solution at making the problem disappear by like literally making the thing that the problem is about disappearing, is not like an effective or a reasonable thing to expect us to do.
Okay. Octavian, please.
We have a system in place in the United States in which we force people academically and athletically to focus on both athletics and academics, depending on which one they don't want to do. So if you're an athlete, you have to focus on academics. And if you're an academic person, you have to focus on athletics. I mean, key to the system today, because that's the way it is, right? And what I'm advocating for is a different way to do it, in which other countries have already solved this problem, where you don't have to connect these two. You don't have to. There are problems that we already talked about by connecting these two, that we talked about throughout the debate, including like lowering academic grades for people who want to focus on academics, athletes who are obviously going to be professional, being forced to go through the collegiate system, giving billions of dollars to these colleges instead of getting paid, forcing them to not, have their labor rights. And you have the system in place where you have club systems in Europe that have already solved this problem, that have already, created solutions both academically and athletically to solve this problem, right? And we keep saying, well, because it's unlikely for us to be able to solve it, because, as I agree, it is very entrenched into America to be able to, implement the system. But it doesn't mean it's not a better system, right? When we look at, places like Germany, places like, at least specifically, Denmark, Sweden, and other places that have club-based systems in Europe, they seem to perform better academically, and they seem to be able to produce, at least when they have these specific athletes that they want to produce at a more efficient level, athletics. So that's it.
Okay. Yeah, so we're waiting for the judges to make a decision. But yeah, we will be crowning a winner. This will be the finale, the Prisoner. gets to walk away with a $1,200 prize. I'm very excited to see who gets it. So we're just waiting for our judges. Judges, make sure to give your responses now. Don't wait. Please just do it.
Do either of y'all have any thoughts on the experience of doing this competition that you'd like to talk about?
I like arguing on the internet. I'm kind of good at it, and it's fun. Maybe I'll stream on Twitch and argue with people more.
I enjoyed it.
I thought it was fun. It was very memey. There was a lot of good like memes. There was a lot of lore going on for people who are like in DGG and active. So I
Is
think
this your first
fun.
venture into streaming?
Me? No,
Yeah, is this
I
like
used
your
to
first
stream
time being on?
I used to stream on Justin.tv when I was like 15 and like would max out because back then you had to pay to let more people see your stream, which was funny. But yeah, I've been, I've always messed around with streaming, but I'm not. I don't know. Maybe there could be some more diverse voices out there in the political Twitch debate sphere. So who knows? Maybe I'll find a niche.
I'm already used to this type of stuff. I was on Prime like a year ago or whatever, like
Whoa.
2 times.
Woo!
It's crazy. But
what'd you do?
Nothing.
You're a big brain, Octavian, dude. You're a big brain.
I've changed a lot, but yeah, I used to like do a ton of stuff in like the debatosphere like long ago. I just chill on DGG after a pretty
What's
long
your
time.
major?
What's my major?
Yeah, what's your major in school?
I don't think I'm going to say that right now. In front of
Oh,
a bunch of
okay.
people.
No,
so
don't worry about
especially
that.
not going to say in a bunch of people who I was arguing with in chat. Actually, the best part for me was screaming people in chat over this topic. That was really fun.
Dude, I don't have chat open for these. I don't.
A lot of people were not liking me in chat, and I just started debating them in chat.
Yeah, but you stood your fucking ground, Octavian. Listen, they're a bunch of like fucking pixels, bro. Fuck them. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny though. I enjoyed it though. This is definitely a fun experience.
Did you play? Have you actually played any like? Did you play sports in high school, college at all?
I played in high school, not in college though.
Oh, okay. I played football in high school. I was a meathead.
Played basketball, but I never went varsity, so just kind of bullshit or whatever. I wasn't like athletically gifted or whatever. It was probably just because they needed people. And yeah, I was actually really, really fucking fat in high school, so I never actually played sports. But I was like around where some people play sports. And I like kind of know the culture at least, and I watch a fuck ton of sports now.
Oh, so you had like a fitness kind of makeover then, huh?
Yeah.
You lost a lot. Yeah, I've previously lost. I actually lost weight after COVID hit for some reason. I just like wasn't eating. It was bizarre.
Okay. All right. So it's been tallied, right? The votes been tallied, and 3-2. The winner is Octavian. Good work. You did it. Hey, huzzah!
That was a surprise to me. I think J-Balls did really well. But I guess thank you to the judges. I did not think I'd make it this far.
Yeah, but you did.
It was all my rhetorical skills in debate in previous debate shows that got me to win.
Truly a cumulative.
It was a cumulative effort of my ability to rhetorically destroy my opponents, even if those in chat disagree with me.
Yeah, you somehow just won a debate without actually disproving my point. It's very cool. Congratulations. Rhetorically,
yeah, extremely rhetorically. I think all times. I'd like to thank first of all Toyolo and those also in the background. You know yourself who have who've worked on this for a long time and through a lot of trials and tribulations to get this done. This is an extremely interesting event that has gone through a lot of ups and downs, and I think the idea of it is insanely good. I think we've worked out a lot of kinks, at least in the background, like while talking to different moderators and different judges and stuff like that. I like to thank Prime for hosting this, at least like personally, for like just doing this and trying it out because I had fun doing it. I hope Prime had fun hosting it and stuff like that. So, and I thank J Boss specifically for at least debating. I mean, a lot of people don't like debating on this stuff, and congratulations to him for getting the finals, because holy shit, was your bracket insanely hard to get here. So,
Dude, you have no idea, bro. Sweating every time. That was brutal.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, J Boss, do you have anything you want to add?
No, this was fun. This was cool. I think, nah, I'm not gonna say that. But this was, yeah, it was fun time, good time. I think Octavian's really smart. I think the judges right now are just totally wrong. But hey, that's fine. Like, if I'm being honest, and I'm pretty sure as soon as I get off of this call and go into Discord, everyone's gonna probably agree. And this isn't even to say anything against Octavian, but I think, if anything, though, maybe Octavian just did a better job. Maybe they're right. Octavian is brilliant. This was really fun, and I appreciate it. But the judges are all wrong, and I'm walking away. I am walking away with the greatest prize of all. Follow me on Twitter at JBoss. I'm walking away with the hearts. I'm walking away with the hearts of the people. I'm walking away with the hearts of the people.
Okay.
The underdog.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all who stuck by this tournament as we got it through. Yeah, we had a few kinks to work out. But you know, this is the first time doing something like this, so it's kind of to be expected. But I think the participants who stuck through it as well. I mean, we couldn't do it without you, literally. So thank you to everyone who came through and was a part of all this. Shout out to you. So we'll be getting our friend Octavian in contact with the person who will be actually distributing the money. It's not me.
Yeah, I'll help you take care of the ending processes of this. We got a little outboarding program for you that we'll handle off camera. And it's smooth sailing from here for everybody. Thank you so much to everybody who participated, everybody who had a controversial take that triggered this, everybody who put like a ton of effort and time into arguing with each other online. This has been a very fun experience, and I hope to do cool things like this in the future for everybody.
Viva la revolution, my brothers in arms. We will.
You took an L. You took an L.
I will
admit it. J-Boss, I beat you in a debate. You can't run away from it now. Fair and square.
I don't know, dude. Maybe. Yeah. No, I'm happy for you, bro. I'm happy for you. You deserve it.
Okay.
All right, guys. We've made it to the end of the journey.
Everybody have a good night, all right?
Yeah. So what we will do, of course, we'll have the Rugby Roundtable tomorrow, right? So if you're just stopping by, enjoying the content, hit that follow button right now and make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. We do this all the time, 7 nights a week. We'll also have the Rugby tomorrow, so come back for that. Xbox social and chat for our social media. Follow us on Twitter for updates like that. Discord, where we do everything happens on Discord. Be a part of our community there, and YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. If you missed anything, hit up the VODs on YouTube. Anyone else, you have social media you want people to follow you at?
Plug, boys, plug it up now. Never, plug it up. You just won $1,200. Plug it. The world is yours.
Follow me on twitch.tv/Octavian821. If you haven't seen me screaming at people in chat, you should already know who I am, at least if you're a chatter. If you're not a chatter, twitch.tv/Octavian821. And yeah, that's the only thing I'm plugging. So, J-Boss, you gonna plug your Twitter?
Oh yeah, it's at J-Boss. It's at my name, J-Boss.
Okay. And last but not least, we're going to send everyone over to Toyola to the stream right now.
I'm babysitting you guys now. You can talk to me about the tournament and yell at me for my decisions now.